Hello and welcome to the UPSC Mains PYQ series by Shikara Academy. In this series, we are discussing all the UPSC Mains PYQ questions asked by UPSC over the past years. In this session, we will be discussing about the 2024 GS Paper 1 questions 16 to 20th. So continuing our series, here's the first question. Now this question was asked in 2024 GS Paper 1. That was question number 16. What is a twister? Why are the majority of twisters observed in areas around the Gulf of Mexico? Now, it is a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of geography, and the topic is important geophysical phenomena, especially the twisters, or what we commonly call them as the tornadoes. So the approach that we'll be taking in answering such a question is that in introduction, we will be describing what is a twister because we have been asked about what is a twister. And then we link it to the body. And in the body, we address the demand of the question. So in the body of the answer, the demand of the question needs to be addressed. And the question says we have to define the twister and we have to give the reasons why majority of twisters are observed around the area of Gulf of Mexico, around the Gulf of Mexico, that is on the eastern side or the southeast side of the US. So in body, we'll write about formation and characteristics of a twisters, reasons why most twisters are observed around the Gulf of Mexico, and in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer. Now, starting with the introduction, a twister, commonly known as a tornado, is one of nature's most violent atmospheric phenomena. It is a rapidly rotating column of air that extends from the base of a thunderstorm down to the ground, often visible as a funnel-shaped cloud. So this funnel-shaped cloud is the keyword that we use to describe what is a twister or what is a tornado. So in the first line, in the first couple of lines of the introduction, we have described what a twister is, what a tornado is. Then in the second line, while tornadoes can occur in many parts of the world, the majority are observed in the United States, especially in areas around the Gulf of Mexico. In the second line, we are trying to connect the introduction with the body of the answer. Now, in body, we write that twister is an informal term for a tornado, which is a violently rotating column of air connecting the thunderstorm to the ground. Now, it is characterized by a funnel shaped cloud, intense wind speeds, and narrow destructive path. So, there are three characteristics, that is, the funnel shaped cloud, intense wind speeds, as well as a narrow and destructive path. The path that a tornado caters to, or the path in which a tornado moves forward, is really narrow. Tornadoes typically last from few minutes to an hour. They are not very long lasting, but they cause extensive damage during that few minutes or hourly life cycle. They are rated on the enhanced Fujita scale or the EF scale, starting from EF0 to EF5. EF0 being the weakest tornadoes and EF5 being the most destructive form of tornadoes. Now, what is the formation? What is the phenomena of formation of these twisters or tornadoes? Tornadoes form mainly in the supercell thunderstorms, which feature a rotating updraft. Okay, so the key ingredients, like what makes up a tornado, is that firstly we should have been warm, moist air near the surface. Secondly, is the cold, dry air aloft it. Third is the wind shear, that is the variation in wind speed and direction with height. Fourth is the atmospheric instability, allowing the air to rise. So these are the 4 or 5 factors or the ingredients that are required for a twister or for a tornado to form. Then we discuss the reasons for twister formation around the Gulf of Mexico. That is geographical as well as the climatic factors. So firstly, we know it need warm temperature. So firstly is the proximity to the warm ocean waters. Gulf of Mexico supplies the continuous stream of warm, moist air, which is crucial for thunderstorm and the tornado development. Because we all know that the Gulf of Mexico lies in the tropical region. Okay, so it is a source of the warm ocean water. Second is the clash of air masses. The region around the Gulf of Mexico it frequently experiences the collision of warm, moist air that is coming from the Gulf of Mexico with the cold, dry air descending from the Rockies or Canada. So, from the lower latitudes, the warm, moisture-rich air, the more warm and moist air is going up, and from the higher latitudes, the cold, dry air is coming down, and these two air masses, that is moist and warm and dry and cold, they collide with each other. Now, this collision creates strong atmospheric instability, which is ideal for severe thunderstorms and the tornadoes. Third is the influence of the jet streams. Okay, so the jet stream, a high altitude, fast moving air current, often dips southward over this area, enhancing the wind shear as well as further promoting tornado formation. Fourth is the flat terrain. The central US, including the areas around the Gulf of Mexico, features the flat landscapes. For example, the Great Plains and the Mississippi Valley. So, the flat terrain or the flat surface allows the air masses to meet without obstruction. Now, if there are higher plateaus or high mountains over there, so they cause an obstruction in the air masses or they prevent the air masses from colliding effectively. But because the surface is plain, the terrain is flat, so the large air masses they collide frequently. This increases the likelihood of a severe weather. Lastly is the seasonal patterns. The tornado activity peaks in spring and early summer when these atmospheric conditions most frequently align. Now, in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer. So, we'll write that twisters or tornadoes are rapidly rotating columns of air that form under specific atmospheric conditions. Now, what are the specific atmospheric conditions? That is, the majority of twisters are observed around in areas of around Gulf of Mexico due to unique convergence of warm, moist air from Gulf, cold, dry air from north. So, the collision of the air masses. Secondly, is the favorable jet stream patterns and the flat terrain. So, these three are the main reasons. These factors combine to make the central US, especially the Tornado Alley, the most tornado prone region in the world. And because for any of these destructive geophysical phenomena, in conclusion, we write a line regarding the mitigation of these phenomena. Okay, so in conclusion, we will be writing that understanding these mechanisms is vital for preparedness and risk mitigation in the affected areas. Okay, moving on to the next question, that is question 17. Now it is asking, what is regional disparity? How does it differ from diversity? And how serious is the issue of regional disparity in India? So the question is asking three things. That is, we have to define what regional disparity is. We have to differentiate regional disparity with diversity. And then we have to answer how serious is the issue of regional disparity in India. Okay. So it is a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of society and the topic is regionalism. Now, the approach that we'll be taking is that in introduction, we will be describing what a regional disparity is. Then in body, we write about regional disparity, difference between regional disparity and diversity, and the seriousness of regional disparity in India. So that is, in body, we will be addressing the demand of the question. Then in conclusion, we will be writing a way forward or a forward-looking conclusion. Starting with the introduction, regional disparity is a persistent and complex challenge in India's development journey. It refers to the unequal distribution of resources, opportunities, and development across different geographical areas, leading to significant variations in economic growth, living standards, quality of life within the country. So, in introduction, we have described what is regional disparity. Then, it denotes the imbalance in socio-economic development among various regions of a country. It manifests as differences in income, difference in infrastructure, in employment, in health, education between states, districts, or even within the same states. Okay, so two states in India they have different. They are at a different level of economic development. Even two districts within the same state they might be at different level economic level. So if you take examples, so states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, these western and the southern states, they are economically advanced while the eastern as well as the northern states such as Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand, they lag behind in key development indicators. Then we have to differentiate between regional disparity and the regional diversity. Okay. So regional disparity is all about unequal development, while diversity refers to the natural or cultural differences that adds to nation's richness. So in a way, regional disparity is a negative term, or it is a negative nature. It denotes negative nature. But on the other hand, the regional diversity, it has positive aspects to it. Okay. So in definition, regional disparity is inequality in development and resources. Regional diversity is the variety in culture, language, and ethnicity. The nature of regional disparity is negative because it highlights the inequality. The nature of regional diversity is neutral or, in many cases, positive because the regional diversity celebrates the differences. Then, the impact of regional disparity is that it leads to social and economic tensions between the states, between the regions, or between the areas within the same states. The regional diversity enriches society and it fosters the feeling of inclusivity. Example, if we can take the poor infrastructure in states of Bihar versus good infrastructure in state of Gujarat, then regional diversity example we can take is of different languages that is spoken across India or the different food habits that we have across the country. Then we have to discuss about the seriousness of regional disparity in India. First is the widespread and persistent. Regional disparities are deeply entrenched with the central, eastern, as well as and in northeastern states. So the central, eastern, and northeast states of the country, they are facing this widespread regional disparities. They face chronic deprivation in housing, education, health, and economic opportunities. Second is the socio-economic consequences. There are high poverty rates in the underdeveloped regions. The migration from poorer to richer states leading to urban crowding and the social tensions. Okay, so people from the less economic developed states or the poorer states, they tend to migrate to these richer states in search of employment, in search of livelihood, and this creates it leads to more and more of urbanization or over urbanization and leads to social tensions between the local population as well as the migrated population. Then it hinders the national integration and the inclusive growth because they ultimately the migration, the urban migration or the urban mobility, it causes the social tensions or between the communities. It hinders the national integration. Then there are structural causes. Historical neglect, uneven industrialization, and skewed investment patterns are the main reasons behind this regional disparity in the country. Policy failures and inadequate infrastructure also are the major factors that leads to the backwardness in the regions. Talking about current scenario, states like Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand, Assam suffer from high deprivation, while states like Kerala, Punjab, Goa, they enjoy better socioeconomic outcomes. Even within the developed states, pocket of deprivation persists, pointing to the intrastate disparities. So, if we can take the example of an intrastate disparity, we can give the example of Maharashtra. So, in the state of Maharashtra, Maharashtra is a very large state. So, the western part of Maharashtra, especially the region around Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, Thane, these districts, the Pune. So in these districts, they are highly economically productive and they are highly economically advanced. But the other regions of the state of Maharashtra, that is the Vidarbha, Marathwada, they are relatively deprived when compared to the regions around Mumbai. Now, in conclusion, we write that the regional disparity is a serious impediment to India's goal of inclusive and sustainable development. Unlike diversity, which is the strength, disparity threatens the social cohesion and equitable progress. Addressing this issue, okay, so we have to write a forward looking line. Okay, we have to make sure that we give the points how we can address this situation. So, addressing this issue requires targeted policy intervention, increased investment in the lagging regions, and focus on decentralized region specific development strategies. Only through such a comprehensive effort can India bridge its regional divides and ensure balanced economic growth for all its citizens. Okay, so we have written a way forward in conclusion. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 18. Despite comprehensive policies for equity and social justice, underprivileged sections are not yet getting the full benefits of affirmative action envisaged by the Constitution. We have to comment on this statement. Okay. So this is a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of society, when the topic is poverty and development issues as well as social empowerment. Okay. Now it is talking about the affirmative action is envisaged in the constitution, but still there is affirmative action envisaged in the constitution, and the government has also made policies in order to fulfill these affirmative actions. But still, yet all the sections or the social justice or underprivileged sections are not getting the full benefits of these affirmative actions or the affirmative policies of the government, and we have to comment on that. So the approach that we'll be taking in introduction, we will be defining or we will be writing about the affirmative action as envisaged in the constitution. Then with the connecting line, we will be connecting the introduction and the body. Okay. Then in body, we write about the reasons for limited impact of affirmative action and recommendations for improvement, because we have to comment. That is, we have to provide the reasons as well as we have to give the recommendations. Then in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer and will be writing a way forward. Starting with the introduction, India's constitution envisions affirmative action to uplift underprivileged sections through policies promoting equity and social justice. Okay. Despite comprehensive legal frameworks, including reservations in education, employment, and political representation, the full benefits of these measures often elude the most marginalized community. So, in introduction, we have written two lines. That is, first is an introductory line, okay, in which we have talked about the affirmative action. In the second line, uh, we have tried to connect the introduction with the body by writing a connecting line. Okay. Then we write the reasons for limited impact of affirmative actions. Okay. First is the implementation gaps. Many reserved positions in education as well as government remain vacant due to lack of awareness, inadequate outreach, and insufficient support for the candidates. Okay. So there is firstly a grave lack of awareness. Secondly, the administrative delays and the bureaucratic inefficiencies, such as slow caste certificate processing, hinder timely access to the benefits. Second is the awareness and accessibility. So, first is the awareness, second is the accessibility. The marginalized communities often lack information about the available schemes, limiting their participation. So, if these communities, these marginalized groups, if they are not aware of the schemes that have been made for them, so how can, if they are unaware of the schemes, how can we expect that they will be participating in those schemes? Okay. Economic barriers such as inability to afford private schooling or coaching further restrict the access. Third is the persistent social discrimination. Caste-based biases continue in educational institutions and workplaces, undermining the intent of reservation. Intersectional disadvantages, such as those faced by women, religious minorities, and LGBTQ plus individuals within the reserved categories, are inadequately addressed. Okay, so within these marginalized groups, there are certain sections of population which are at further disadvantage, especially women, religious minorities, and the transgender or the LGBTQ community. Fourth is the elite capture and political manipulation. The benefits of the affirmative action or the reservation benefits are sometimes cornered by relatively better off individuals within the marginalized groups, such as the creamy layer. Okay, so these leave the poorest people behind. So that is why there have been a call for the subcategorization within these deprived section. That is, last year Supreme Court also gave the judgment for the subcategorization of the scheduled caste. In OBCs, we already have the concept of creamy layer as well as the non-creamy layer. Then political parties often use reservation policies for electoral gains rather than the genuine empowerment. And this has been the case for last 75 years, that the political parties, they use this affirmative action or this reservation just as a tool to get the electoral gains, and they are not at all not that much interested in the genuine empowerment of these social classes. Then is the complex and overlapping criteria. Confusion between caste-based and social and economic-based reservation and complex subcategorization leads to inefficiencies in the and dissatisfaction. Fourth is the privatization and limited scope. So increasing privatization in education and employment. So over the past few decades, it has been seen that the education sector as well as in employment, there has been an increased role of private players. And this reduces the effectiveness of the reservations because, which mainly apply to the private sector, public sector, because the affirmative actions or reservations are limited to the public sector only. Increasing privatization in education as well as in the employment, it negates or it reduces the effectiveness of reservations because reservations or affirmative action do not apply to the private sector. Then, what are the recommendations for improvement? First is the enhanced awareness and outreach. So, proactive dissemination of information and support of the marginalized communities. Second is the regular monitoring and data collection, updated socioeconomic surveys to ensure benefits reach the intended groups. Third is are the targeted reforms, clearer guidelines to prevent elite capture and address these intersectional inequalities. Lastly is the expanding scope, explore affirmative action in the private sector and balance caste based with the economic criteria. So the problems that was there. So reasons for every reason we have come up with the recommendations. Firstly, we have to enhance the awareness and the outreach. Second, we have to regularly monitor and collect as much data as possible in order to make sure we are getting the data from the updated socio-economic surveys. Thirdly, are the targeted reforms so that there is no elite capture. Finally, we can see the potential. We can explore the options that these affirmative actions of the reservation. The idea of reservation, can it be extended to the private sector or not? Okay. Then, in conclusion, we write while India's affirmative action policies have increased representation for some underprivileged groups, systemic barriers, poor implementation, and social discrimination continue to limit their reach and effectiveness. Okay. Now, this is the summary of the answer. In the second line, we will be writing a forward looking line. Realizing the Constitution's vision requires not only robust policy frameworks but also sincere, sustained efforts to ensure that most marginalized genuinely benefit from these measures. Okay. Second is the forward looking line. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 19. Globalization has increased urban migration by skilled young unmarried women from various classes. Okay. Now, this is our introductory statement. Okay. How has this trend impacted upon their personal freedom and relationship with the family? A 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words. Okay. So, mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of society. That is the topic effect of globalization on Indian society. Okay. So, it is asking about that it is asking about globalization. Okay. And how, because of the globalization, there has been an urban migration of the skilled young unmarried women. They are from the small towns and the rural areas, they are migrating to these large urban centers, and how this trend has impacted her personal freedom as well as her relationship with her own family. Now, discussing the approach. In introduction, we will be writing about we will be describing the globalization and will be connecting the introduction with the body. In body, we will be addressing the demand of the question, particularly the two demands, that is impact of urban migration on the personal freedom of women as well as her impact of this migration on her relationship with the family. In conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer. Now, in introduction, we can write that globalization has accelerated the migration of skilled young unmarried women from diverse social classes to urban centers. Okay, so this was the introductory statement that was given in the question. So the introductory statement that is given in the question has to be dealt in the introduction itself. Okay, this shift is driven by expanding economic opportunities, access to higher education, and exposure to global cultures. The trend has deeply influenced both their personal freedom as well as their relationship with family, marking a significant transformation in societal norms. Now, writing about the impact on personal freedom. Firstly is the economic independence, very important. Urban employment, especially in sectors like IT, BPO, finance, has enabled the women to achieve financial autonomy. Okay, so with financial autonomy, often earning salaries equal to or greater than the male counterparts. Second is the decision making power. With economic independence or financial autonomy comes the decision making power. With financial independence, women gain control over their career choices, over their lifestyle, as well as the timing of their marriage. And this challenges their traditional societal expectations. Third is the broadened horizons. The exposure to diverse cultures and ideas in cities fosters self expression and encourages women to question and redefine gender roles. Fourth is the access to education. Urban areas offer better educational and skill development opportunities, further enhancing women's personal and professional growth. Finally, the challenges. Despite increased freedom, women face safety concerns in the cities. They face social isolation as well as the pressure of balancing the work and personal life. Okay, so in cities, women face the safety concerns, the social isolation, as well as of pressure of maintaining or balancing the work life as well as the professional life. Now, the impact of urban migration on relationship with family. First is the changing family dynamics. So, migration often leads to a shift from joint to nuclear families. So, earlier, the girls or the women they used to live in joint families. Now, with urban migration, the concept of joint family has converted to the concept of nuclear families, and this alters the traditional roles and expectation. So the roles and expectations in the joint family are different than the roles and expectations in a nuclear family. Second is the long distance relationships. Physical separation requires new ways to maintain familial bonds, sometimes leading to emotional distance. Third is the negotiating tradition and modernity. So, families may struggle to accept women's independence, resulting in generational conflicts, especially regarding marriage and lifestyle choices. So, with financial autonomy, the woman starts to make her own decisions and she is more independent. But the family, initially they may struggle to accept the women's independence, and this results in the conflicts and the friction, especially in marriage as well as lifestyle choices. Then there is financial contribution. So many women support their families financially, which can improve familial relationship and foster greater acceptance of their autonomy. So when the women they are working in the cities, so they send money to their home in the rural and areas as well as in the small towns to their families. Okay, so they support their families financially. Now, this financial support or this monetary support to families improve the familiar relationship because money heals everything. Okay, and it fosters greater acceptance of their autonomy. So once the money starts coming, okay, so families it becomes easier for them to accept the autonomy or the financial autonomy as well as the choices of the girl. Then there are redefining gender roles. Successes in the urban workplaces challenges conventional gender norms and can inspire other female relatives to pursue education and employment. So, if one girl or one unmarried woman from a family moves to the cities and gets settled out there, she gets education, she gets employment in the cities. So she becomes a role model for the other girls, the other young girls in her family or in her native neighborhood, so that they also migrate to the urban areas, okay, to pursue education and for the employment. Then in conclusion, we write globalization induced urban migration has empowered skilled young unmarried women with unprecedented personal freedom and opportunities. While this has led to greater autonomy and social mobility, it also brings evolving family dynamics, sometimes marked by tensions between tradition and modernity. Okay. Ultimately, this trend is not only transforming individual lives but also reshaping the broader social fabric, paving the way for a more inclusive as well as progressive society. So, we have summarized the answer. Moving on to the last question, that is question number 20. Critically analyze the proposition that there is a high correlation between India's cultural diversity and socio-economic marginalities. Okay, a 15-mark question that we have to answer in 250 words, and in this question we have to critically analyze whether there is a high correlation between India's cultural diversities and socio-economic marginalities. Okay, so this is diversity. This is a question of diversity versus marginality in broader terms. So these two are the themes of the question. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of society, that is salient features of Indian society. Now, the introduction, the approach that we'll be taking in introduction, we describe India's cultural diversity. Okay, we will be describing the cultural diversity of India. Then in body, we address the demand of the question, that is we write arguments supporting the high correlation, and then we give the counter arguments, that is decoupling the diversity from marginality. Then in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer and write a forward looking line. Starting with the introduction, India is renowned for its vast cultural diversity, encompassing a multitude of languages, religions, caste, and ethnicities. So we have diversity in language, we have diversity in religion, we have diversity in castes, in ethnicities. However, this diversity often overlaps with the socio-economic marginalities, raising the proposition that there is a high correlation between the two. Critical analysis is essential to understand the nuances of this relationship. So we have introduced the answer and we have connected with the body that we will be critically analyzing it. Then in body, we will be writing the arguments supporting high correlation. Firstly, the historical disadvantage. The caste system as well as the social stratification have historically marginalized scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and certain religious minorities, resulting in entrenched poverty and exclusion. For example, 79% of rural SC households rely on manual labors. This was reflecting the socioeconomic disadvantage according to the socioeconomic caste census of 2011. Then we write about geographical and cultural barriers. Tribal communities, often concentrated in remote areas, they face high poverty rates and displacement, with 50% of STs living in the multidimensional poverty, that is according to the MPI index of 2019. Then there are linguistic and regional minorities may experience limited access to quality education and employment opportunities. Lastly, third is the discrimination as well as exclusion. Cultural differences can lead to social exclusion, limiting access to public services, healthcare, and political representation. Okay, so starting with history, we have then we write about the geographical as well as cultural barriers, then write about the discrimination as well as the exclusion. Then we give counter arguments that decouple the diversity from marginality. Okay, first we'll give the success stories of diverse states. So we can give the example of states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which have high cultural diversity. Okay, despite high cultural diversity in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, they have achieved high literacy and socio-economic development, and this challenges the inevitability of marginalization. Second is the impact of policy interventions. So affirmative actions, reservation, and targeted welfare schemes have helped to bridge the gap between many marginalized communities. Third is the urbanization and economic mobility. Okay, so over the past decades, the urban centers provide opportunities that often transcend cultural barriers, enabling upward mobility for migrants from diverse backgrounds. Lastly, not all diversity equals marginality. Some upper caste or dominant groups in rural areas also face economic hardships, indicating that cultural identity alone does not determine the socioeconomic status. So, within the upper castes, also we have some rich families, some poor families. Also, in the uh, deprived classes or in the deprived castes, also we have some families which are very well off and some which are not. So, we can safely conclude that not all diversity equals marginality, because the cultural identity alone does not determine the socioeconomic status of the section of the population. Then, in conclusion, we will be summarizing the answer that while there is a significant evidence of correlation between India's cultural diversity and socioeconomic marginalities, which is rooted in historical, structural, and social factors. This relationship is neither absolute nor static. Okay, this correlation between marginality and um, uh, diversity is not absolute, it is not static. The interplay of geography, policy interventions, and changing socioeconomic dynamics means that the cultural diversity of does not inevitably translate into marginality. Addressing these complexities through inclusive development and social reform is essential for equitable progress in India. And this is our forward looking line. Okay. So, the PDF of these model answers will be available to you on Shikara Academy's Telegram channel. Thank you.